Hello and welcome. Today, I'm going to whisper to you about one of the greatest pharaohs in ancient history, Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great. So, get comfortable, relax, and join me as we travel back in time to explore the life of this powerful and legendary ruler of Egypt. Ramses II's reign marked a golden age of military triumphs, architectural wonders, and diplomatic achievements. Over the next few moments, I'll guide you through the extraordinary journey of his life, from his early days as a young prince to his legendary battles, monumental constructions, and his long-lasting influence on the world. As you listen, imagine the grand temples of Egypt, the roar of distant battles, and the serene beauty of the Nile River flowing through this ancient land. Let's begin our journey into the world of Ramses the Great. Early life of Ramses II. Ramses II was born around 1303 BCE, in a time when Egypt was a powerful and stable kingdom under the rule of the 19th dynasty. His father, Seti I, was a respected and experienced pharaoh who had expanded Egypt's influence through military conquests and diplomatic relations. From the moment of his birth, it was clear that Ramses was destined for a life of leadership, but his path to greatness would require years of preparation and training. Ramses grew up in the royal palaces of Thebes and Memphis, the political and religious centers of Egypt. These cities were hubs of activity, where the decisions that shaped the future of Egypt were made. As the son of Seti I, Ramses was afforded every privilege, but he was also given significant responsibilities from a young age. His education began early, focusing on subjects crucial for a future ruler: religion, governance, military strategy, and diplomacy. From childhood, Ramses was exposed to the complexities of ruling a vast and diverse empire like Egypt. His father, a skilled military commander, often brought Ramses along on expeditions, teaching him the importance of military strength in maintaining Egypt's borders and ensuring its prosperity. These early experiences on the battlefield were crucial in shaping Ramses' understanding of leadership. He witnessed firsthand the challenges of commanding an army, the tactics required to outmaneuver enemies, and the vital role of diplomacy in securing peace. In addition to his military education, Ramses also learned the religious duties of a pharaoh. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was not just a political leader, he was also seen as a divine figure, the living embodiment of the gods on earth. This dual role required Ramses to participate in important religious ceremonies and rituals from a young age. He was taught how to conduct offerings to the gods, lead processions, and ensure the balance of Ma'at, the ancient Egyptian concept of order and harmony. These religious responsibilities were central to the legitimacy of his rule, as the pharaoh was seen as the intermediary between the gods and the people. As Ramses grew older, his father Seti I entrusted him with greater responsibilities. By his teenage years, Ramses had already begun to take part in the governance of Egypt. He was given his first command over an army, where he proved himself as a capable and courageous leader. This early military success bolstered his confidence and cemented his reputation among the elite as a strong and promising leader. Ramses' upbringing was also shaped by the royal family's extensive building projects. The 19th dynasty was known for its ambitious architectural endeavors, and Seti I had undertaken several large-scale construction projects throughout Egypt. Ramses was exposed to the planning and execution of these monumental works, learning how to organize labor, manage resources, and leave a lasting legacy through architecture. This experience would later influence his own reign, as Ramses would go on to build some of the most impressive structures in Egyptian history, including the great temples of Abu Simbel and his mortuary temple, the Ramesseum. One of the most significant milestones in Ramses' early life came when his father appointed him as co-regent, likely when Ramses was in his late teens. This was a common practice in ancient Egypt, where the reigning pharaoh would appoint a co-ruler to ensure a smooth transition of power. As co-regent, Ramses ruled alongside Seti I, sharing in the responsibilities of governance and learning firsthand how to manage the vast Egyptian empire. This position gave Ramses invaluable experience in administration, diplomacy, and military command, all of which would serve him well when he eventually ascended to the throne. During this time, Ramses also began to cultivate his public image as a leader. Statues and reliefs were created depicting him as a strong and youthful prince, often shown alongside his father. These images were not just representations of the royal family, they were carefully crafted pieces of propaganda designed to show Ramses as the rightful heir to the throne and to reinforce his divine right to rule. The people of Egypt were gradually introduced to Ramses as their future pharaoh, and his presence in temples and public spaces helped solidify his position in the eyes of the population. By the time Seti I passed away, Ramses was fully prepared to take on the role of pharaoh. He had been groomed for leadership from a young age, and his experience as co-regent had given him the skills and confidence needed to lead Egypt into one of the most prosperous periods in its history. His early life, marked by military success, religious devotion, and careful preparation, set the stage for his long and illustrious reign as one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Becoming pharaoh, ascension to the throne. When Ramses II ascended to the throne in 1279 BCE, Egypt was already a vast and powerful empire. His father, Seti I, had laid the groundwork for a stable and prosperous kingdom, but it was Ramses II who would take this legacy to new heights. His official rise to power marked the beginning of one of the longest and most celebrated reigns in Egyptian history, spanning nearly 66 years. Ramses was well prepared for his new role, having spent years as co-regent with his father, a position that allowed him to learn the intricacies of ruling an empire firsthand. The coronation of Ramses II was a grand and elaborate event, steeped in religious and political symbolism. In ancient Egypt, the coronation of a pharaoh was not just a political transition, it was also a religious ceremony that affirmed the pharaoh's divine connection to the gods. Ramses' coronation took place in Thebes, the religious heart of Egypt, where priests of the god Ammonius performed rituals to confirm his status as the earthly representative of the gods. These ceremonies were crucial, as they legitimized Ramses' rule in the eyes of both the elite and the common people of Egypt. As part of the coronation process, Ramses adopted the traditional 5 names of the pharaoh, each one signifying a different aspect of his rule. These names reflected his divine authority, his military prowess, and his role as the protector of Egypt. One of these names, Usermater-Setepenra, meaning the justice of Ra is powerful, chosen of Ra, became central to his reign. This title emphasized Ramses' connection to Ra, the sun god, and highlighted his role as the one chosen by the gods to maintain Ma'at, the cosmic balance of justice, truth, and order. Upon ascending to the throne, Ramses quickly set about solidifying his power. One of his first acts as pharaoh was to ensure the loyalty of Egypt's elite, particularly the military leaders and high-ranking officials who had served under his father. Ramses was acutely aware that maintaining the support of the military was crucial to his reign. Egypt was a vast empire with territories stretching from Nubia in the south to Canaan and Syria in the northeast, and keeping these regions under control required a strong and loyal army. To secure the loyalty of his army, Ramses lavished military leaders with gifts and titles, ensuring that they remained firmly on his side. He also continued his father's policy of promoting commoners to positions of power based on merit rather than birth. This approach helped Ramses maintain a strong and effective administration, as those in power were deeply loyal to him and committed to the prosperity of Egypt. Ramses also understood the importance of displaying his power and authority through monumental architecture. In the early years of his reign, he embarked on an ambitious building program that would come to define his legacy. One of his first major projects was the expansion of the Great Temple of Ammonius at Karnak, one of the most important religious sites in Egypt. By adding new structures and statues to the temple complex, Ramses not only honored the gods but also reinforced his status as a powerful and divine ruler. The early years of Ramses' reign were marked by a focus on internal stability and consolidation of power. While his military campaigns would come later, his first priority as pharaoh was to ensure that Egypt remained secure and prosperous. He implemented policies to improve the agricultural infrastructure, ensuring that the Nile's annual flooding was managed effectively and that the food supply was stable. This focus on agriculture was critical, as Egypt's economy was heavily dependent on farming, and a strong agricultural base was essential for maintaining the wealth and power of the kingdom. Religious legitimacy continued to play a central role in Ramses' reign. As pharaoh, he was not only the political leader of Egypt but also its highest religious authority. Ramses took his religious duties seriously, leading major festivals and offering sacrifices to the gods on behalf of his people. His close relationship with the priesthood, particularly the powerful priests of Ammonius and Thebes, helped reinforce his divine status. The priests played a key role in maintaining his legitimacy, as they controlled the religious ceremonies that affirmed his role as the intermediary between the gods and the people. One of the most significant aspects of Ramses' early reign was his ability to present himself as the rightful and divinely appointed ruler of Egypt. He understood the importance of public image and used art, architecture, and religious ceremonies to solidify his position. In statues and reliefs, he was often depicted as a warrior king, a powerful and unshakable ruler who had been chosen by the gods to protect Egypt. These depictions were not just for the elite, they were meant to inspire awe and loyalty among the general population as well. In addition to his public image, Ramses' early reign was defined by his personal relationships. He married several queens, the most famous of whom was Nefertari. Nefertari was not only his beloved wife, but also a key political figure. She played an important role in the royal court, participating in religious ceremonies and representing Ramses at various events. The couple's relationship was immortalized in the magnificent temples at Abu Simbel, where Nefertari is depicted alongside Ramses in a position of honor, showing the deep affection and respect he had for her. Ramses also fathered many children, and his sons would go on to play significant roles in his administration and military campaigns. His large family was a source of strength, as his sons and daughters helped him maintain control over Egypt's vast territories and ensured the stability of his reign. Ramses II's ascension to the throne was a carefully orchestrated and deliberate process. By the time he became pharaoh, he had already gained valuable experience as co-regent and had cultivated strong relationships with Egypt's military, religious, and political leaders. His early reign was focused on ensuring the loyalty of his people, securing Egypt's borders and reinforcing his status as a divine ruler. Through his ambitious building projects, religious devotion, and careful political maneuvering, Ramses set the stage for what would become one of the most successful reigns in Egyptian history. As we move forward in Ramses' story, we will explore how his military campaigns and diplomatic efforts expanded Egypt's influence and how he became known not just as a ruler but as a symbol of power and greatness. Military campaigns, the Battle of Kadesh. Ramses II's reign is often remembered for his remarkable military achievements, particularly his involvement in one of the most famous battles of the ancient world, the Battle of Kadesh. This battle, fought against the Hittites in 1274 BCE, stands out as one of the largest chariot battles ever recorded and is considered a defining moment in Ramses' early reign. It was a pivotal confrontation, not only because of its scale but also because it marked the height of the power struggle between the Egyptian and Hittite empires, both vying for control over key territories in the Near East. By the time of the Battle of Kadesh, Ramses had already led several successful military campaigns in Nubia and the Levant, regions that were crucial to Egypt's control over its southern and northeastern borders. These campaigns were designed to secure Egypt's territorial interests and assert Ramses' dominance as a military leader. However, Kadesh would prove to be his most challenging and ambitious military undertaking. The city of Kadesh, located on the Orontes River in modern-day Syria, was strategically important for both Egypt and the Hittite Empire. Whoever controlled Kadesh had access to key trade routes and the ability to influence the surrounding regions. For Ramses, reclaiming Kadesh, which had fallen under Hittite control, was not just about expanding Egypt's influence, it was about asserting his authority as the rightful ruler of the region and re-establishing Egypt as the dominant power in the Near East. Ramses II launched his campaign with great confidence, assembling one of the largest armies Egypt had ever fielded. His forces consisted of 4 divisions, each named after one of Egypt's major gods, Ammonius, Ra, Ta, and Seth. These divisions included thousands of soldiers, along with hundreds of chariots, which were the primary strike force in ancient Egyptian warfare. Chariots, fast and maneuverable, played a key role in ancient battles, allowing for rapid strikes and retreats. Ramses himself led the Ammonius division, demonstrating his leadership and willingness to personally command his troops on the battlefield. As Ramses' army approached Kadesh, he believed the Hittite forces to be far away, thanks to false intelligence provided by 2 Hittite spies who had been captured by the Egyptians. Confident that he would face little resistance, Ramses advanced rapidly, separating his divisions in the process. However, this intelligence was a trap. Hittite King Muwatalli II had hidden his forces near Kadesh, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Egyptian army had walked into an ambush. The Hittites launched a sudden and overwhelming attack on Ramses' forces, catching them off guard and nearly overwhelming them. The Egyptian chariot divisions, which were spread out and uncoordinated, were quickly thrown into chaos as the Hittite chariots stormed across the battlefield. Ramses' situation seemed dire as the Hittite forces managed to encircle his camp, threatening to annihilate the Egyptian army. In this moment of crisis, Ramses II demonstrated remarkable leadership and personal bravery. According to Egyptian records, particularly the famous poem of Pentor, Ramses personally rallied his troops and led a counterattack, charging into battle on his chariot. His actions not only prevented a complete collapse of the Egyptian forces, but also inspired his soldiers to regroup and fight back. The Egyptians managed to hold their ground, and reinforcements from the Ta division, which had been lagging behind, arrived just in time to help turn the tide of battle. Although Ramses was able to stabilize this situation and avoid a complete defeat, the Battle of Kadesh did not result in a clear victory for either side. The Egyptians and Hittites both claimed success, but the reality was that the battle ended in a stalemate. Despite Ramses' bold leadership and the fierce fighting on both sides, their empire gained full control over Kadesh. The city remained under Hittite influence, and the war between Egypt and the Hittites would continue for several more years. In the aftermath of Kadesh, Ramses sought to solidify his reputation as a great warrior king. Egyptian inscriptions and reliefs, particularly those in the temples of Karnak and Abu Simbel, depicted the battle as a heroic victory for Ramses, with scenes showing him charging into battle and single-handedly defeating the Hittite forces. These depictions were part of a broader propaganda effort to enhance Ramses' image as a fearless and invincible leader, chosen by the gods to protect Egypt and maintain its dominance. Despite the inconclusive nature of the Battle of Kadesh, it marked a turning point in Ramses' military career. It was the largest and most complex battle of his reign, involving thousands of troops and showcasing his ability to lead under pressure. The battle also highlighted the importance of chariot warfare in ancient Egypt and demonstrated the logistical challenges of managing such a large army in foreign territory. In the years following Kadesh, Ramses continued to lead military campaigns, particularly in the Levant and Nubia. These campaigns were essential for maintaining Egypt's borders and securing its access to vital trade routes. Ramses' military strategy focused not only on direct confrontation with rival powers like the Hittites, but also on establishing a network of alliances and vassal states, which helped Egypt maintain its influence over a vast region. Although the battle did not deliver the decisive victory Ramses had hoped for, it ultimately led to one of the most significant diplomatic achievements of his reign, the signing of the first known peace treaty in history. Nearly 2 decades after Kadesh, Ramses and Hittite King Hattusili III agreed to a formal peace treaty, which ended hostilities between the two empires and established a stable, cooperative relationship. This treaty was unprecedented in its scope and significance, marking the end of years of conflict and setting a new standard for international diplomacy. The Battle of Kadesh may not have resulted in the conquest of the city, but it cemented Ramses' reputation as a skilled military leader and a symbol of Egyptian strength. His ability to rally his troops in the face of overwhelming odds, combined with his later diplomatic success, solidified his place in history as one of Egypt's most celebrated pharaohs. The battle also stands as a testament to the complexities of warfare in the ancient world, where victory was not always measured by territorial gains but by the ability to endure and maintain influence over key regions. As we continue with Ramses' story, we'll explore how his legacy as a builder king further enhanced his reputation and left a lasting impact on the cultural and religious landscape of Egypt. Ramses the Builder, architectural achievements. Ramses II's reign was not only marked by his military prowess, but also by his extraordinary contributions to Egypt's architectural landscape. Often referred to as Ramses the Builder, he left behind a legacy of monumental structures that have stood the test of time, reflecting his power, wealth, and devotion to the gods. His reign saw one of the greatest periods of construction in ancient Egypt, with projects that span from the temples of Thebes to the colossal structures of Abu Simbel. These architectural achievements were not just expressions of religious devotion or political power, they were also designed to immortalize Ramses' reign and ensure his legacy for generations to come. One of Ramses II's most iconic architectural contributions is the temple complex at Abu Simbel. Located in the southern part of Egypt, near the modern-day border with Sudan, Abu Simbel is one of the most awe-inspiring examples of ancient Egyptian architecture. The temple was carved directly into the cliffs along the Nile River and was dedicated to the gods Ammonius, Horti, and Ptah, as well as to Ramses himself. The massive statues of Ramses that adorn the facade of the temple, each towering over 20 meters high, were designed to project his image as a god-king eternally watching over the southern borders of Egypt. The great temple of Abu Simbel was not only a religious site but also a powerful political statement. Its location, deep in Nubian territory, served as a reminder of Egypt's dominance over the region and a warning to any potential invaders. The temple's alignment with the sun was particularly significant. Twice a year, on February 22nd and October 22nd, the first rays of the morning sun penetrate the temple and illuminate the inner sanctuary, bathing the statues of Ramses and the gods in golden light. This phenomenon was a carefully planned architectural feat, emphasizing Ramses' divine connection to the gods and the cosmos. Adjacent to the great temple is the small temple of Abu Simbel, dedicated to Ramses' beloved wife, Queen Nefertari. This temple is notable for its unique depiction of Nefertari alongside Ramses, as Egyptian queens were rarely depicted on the same scale as their pharaoh husbands. The fact that Nefertari's statue is nearly as large as Ramses is a testament to her importance in his life and reign. The temple's inscriptions further highlight Nefertari's role in religious and political affairs, showcasing her as a key figure in Ramses' rule. While Abu Simbel is perhaps the most famous of Ramses' architectural achievements, it was by no means the only one. Ramses II undertook an extensive building program across Egypt, with major projects in Thebes, Memphis, Abydos, and Heliopolis. In Thebes, the religious capital of Egypt, Ramses expanded the temple of Karnak, adding monumental pylons, courtyards, and statues. One of his most significant contributions was the erection of two massive obelisks at Karnak, one of which still stands today. These obelisks, carved from a single piece of granite, were inscribed with declarations of Ramses' power and devotion to the god Ammonius. Ramses also completed the Ramesseum, his mortuary temple on the west bank of the Nile near Thebes. This temple, dedicated to his own cult and the god Ammonius, was another example of his desire to immortalize himself through architecture. The Ramesseum was designed to be a place of worship for Ramses after his death, ensuring that his memory and legacy would endure. The temple's grand entrance is flanked by colossal statues of Ramses, and the walls are adorned with scenes from his military campaigns, including the famous Battle of Kadesh. The Ramesseum also contains storerooms, chapels, and vast courtyards, all reflecting the grandeur and scale of Ramses' vision. Another remarkable project undertaken by Ramses was the construction of the Great Hypostyle Hall at Karnak, one of the most impressive architectural achievements in all of Egypt. The hall, which covers an area of over 50,000 square feet, is filled with 134 massive columns, each intricately decorated with reliefs and hieroglyphs. These columns rise to a height of 21 meters, creating an awe-inspiring forest of stone. The sheer scale of the hypostyle hall was intended to impress both Egyptians and foreigners, showcasing the wealth, power, and divine authority of the pharaoh. Ramses II's building program was not limited to temples and religious structures. He also invested in the construction of infrastructure that would benefit the Egyptian people, such as roads, canals, and storehouses. These projects helped improve Egypt's economy by facilitating trade and agriculture, ensuring that the kingdom remained prosperous during his long reign. Ramses understood that his legacy was not just about monumental statues and temples, but also about the well-being of his people. The scale and scope of Ramses' architectural projects were made possible by the wealth generated through Egypt's vast empire. Egypt controlled important trade routes in the Mediterranean, Nubia, and the Near East, and tribute from these regions flowed into the kingdom's coffers. This wealth allowed Ramses to embark on his ambitious building program without draining Egypt's resources. His ability to balance military expansion, economic prosperity, and religious devotion made him one of the most successful and enduring rulers in Egyptian history. Diplomacy, the first peace treaty. While Ramses II is often celebrated for his military prowess, one of his greatest achievements came not on the battlefield but through diplomacy. Nearly 2 decades after the Battle of Kadesh, Ramses and Hittite King Hattusili III signed what is recognized as the first known peace treaty in history. This treaty marked the end of a long and exhausting conflict between Egypt and the Hittite Empire, two of the most powerful states of the ancient world, and established a lasting peace between the two empires. The Battle of Kadesh had not yielded a decisive victory for either side, and both the Egyptians and the Hittites had continued to vie for control over key territories in the Levant. However, years of fighting had taken a toll on both empires. Egypt and the Hittites faced growing internal pressures, including threats from neighboring regions and the need to stabilize their economies. For Ramses, a lasting peace with the Hittites would allow him to focus on maintaining Egypt's stability and prosperity without the constant threat of war on its northern borders. The peace treaty was unprecedented in its scope and detail. It was written in 2 languages, Egyptian hieroglyphs and Akkadian, the diplomatic language of the time, and carved into stone for posterity. The treaty outlined a mutual defense pact between the two empires, ensuring that if one was attacked by a third party, the other would come to its aid. It also established clear borders between Egypt and the Hittite Empire, reducing the risk of future territorial disputes. One of the most remarkable aspects of the treaty was its recognition of the need for peaceful coexistence. It called for both parties to be at peace and in brotherhood forever, reflecting a shift from conflict to cooperation. The treaty also included provisions for the extradition of refugees, ensuring that political dissenters or criminals could not seek asylum in the other's territory. This agreement signaled a new era in international relations, where diplomacy and negotiation became vital tools for maintaining stability and power. The treaty was sealed with the marriage of Ramses to a Hittite princess, further solidifying the alliance between the two empires. This royal marriage was an important diplomatic gesture, symbolizing the unity between the Egyptian and Hittite royal families. For Ramses, marrying a foreign princess demonstrated his ability to forge alliances not only through warfare but also through diplomacy. The union also reinforced Egypt's influence in the region, as the Hittites were a significant power that could aid in maintaining peace in the Near East. The effects of the treaty were far-reaching. For the remainder of Ramses' reign, Egypt and the Hittite Empire enjoyed a peaceful and cooperative relationship. Trade between the two nations flourished, and the stability created by the treaty allowed Ramses to focus on his ambitious building projects and domestic policies. The peace also enabled both empires to focus on managing their internal affairs without the constant drain of resources caused by war. This historic agreement set a precedent for future diplomatic efforts, highlighting the importance of negotiation and compromise in resolving conflicts. While the treaty was certainly in both empires' best interests, it also reflected Ramses' wisdom as a ruler who understood that military victory was not the only path to power. His ability to balance warfare with diplomacy ensured that Egypt remained a dominant force in the ancient world without engaging in endless conflict. Ramses' role in establishing this peace treaty not only secured his legacy as a military leader, but also as a shrewd diplomat. His reign was defined not just by conquest, but by his capacity to maintain Egypt's influence through peaceful means when necessary. The treaty between Egypt and the Hittites remains one of the most important examples of ancient diplomacy, showcasing Ramses' foresight and his commitment to securing Egypt's future through cooperation rather than conflict. As we move into the next chapter of Ramses' reign, we'll explore his later years and how his legacy as both a warrior and a peacemaker would be remembered throughout history. The role of Nefertari, Ramses II's beloved queen. Among the many wives of Ramses II, none held as prominent a place in his life and reign as Queen Nefertari. Known for her beauty, wisdom, and influence, Nefertari was more than just a beloved companion to the great pharaoh. She played a crucial role in the royal court, religious ceremonies, and diplomatic affairs of ancient Egypt. Her importance is evident not only in the grand monuments Ramses dedicated to her, but also in the way she was depicted in art and inscriptions, which placed her nearly on equal footing with the king. Nefertari was likely of noble birth, though little is known about her life before she became Ramses' chief queen. She bore him several children, further strengthening her position within the royal family. However, Nefertari's significance went beyond her role as a mother and wife. Ramses' deep affection for her is immortalized in the grand monuments he built in her honor. The most famous of these is the small temple of Abu Simbel, where Nefertari is depicted alongside Ramses in an unprecedented display of respect and admiration. In ancient Egyptian art, queens were typically shown in a subordinate position to the king, often depicted as much smaller figures standing behind their husbands. Nefertari, however, was portrayed almost as an equal to Ramses at Abu Simbel. Her statues are nearly as large as Ramses, signifying her elevated status and the unique bond they shared. The inscriptions at Abu Simbel describe Nefertari as the one for whom the sun shines, a phrase that conveys Ramses' profound love and admiration for her. This temple, dedicated to Hathor, the goddess of love and motherhood, further underscores Nefertari's role as a figure of fertility and compassion, linking her to the divine in a way that was rare for Egyptian queens. Nefertari was also deeply involved in the religious life of Egypt. As the great royal wife, she participated in important religious ceremonies, serving as Ramses' partner in rituals that honored the gods and reinforced the divine nature of the pharaoh's rule. Her status as queen gave her a key role in these rituals, and she was often depicted making offerings to the gods alongside Ramses. This involvement in religious activities was not only a demonstration of her piety, but also a way to reinforce her position as Ramses' equal in the divine order. One of the most significant pieces of evidence of Nefertari's influence is her tomb in the Valley of the Queens, often considered one of the most beautiful tombs in all of ancient Egypt. The walls of Nefertari's tomb are adorned with vibrant and intricately painted scenes from the Book of the Dead, a collection of texts meant to guide the soul through the afterlife. These murals depict Nefertari in the company of gods such as Osiris, Isis, and Hathor, suggesting her close connection to the divine and her expected ascension to a blessed afterlife. The tomb itself is a masterpiece of Egyptian art, with its brightly colored frescoes and detailed depictions of Nefertari's journey into the afterlife. The care and resources that were poured into the construction of her tomb are a reflection of Ramses' devotion to her and his desire to honor her even in death. The tomb's inscriptions are filled with titles that highlight her influence and importance, such as Great of Praises and Lady of Grace. These titles, along with the elaborate nature of her tomb, suggest that Nefertari was not just a queen consort but a central figure in Ramses' life and in the royal court. Nefertari also played a subtle but important role in diplomacy. As queen, she had a direct influence on the royal court and on Ramses' decisions, particularly when it came to diplomatic relations with other powers. Nefertari is believed to have corresponded with the Hittite queen Pujahipa, a significant figure in the Hittite Empire, during the time when Ramses and Hittite king Hattusili III were negotiating the historic peace treaty. This correspondence between the two queens was not only a sign of diplomatic respect, but also a demonstration of Nefertari's active involvement in state affairs. While the details of these letters are not fully preserved, the fact that Nefertari was engaged in diplomatic exchanges with foreign rulers shows the level of trust Ramses placed in her judgment and influence. Her role as a diplomatic figure also extended to her presence at state functions, where she would accompany Ramses during important events, further solidifying her image as his equal. This partnership was crucial not only for maintaining internal stability within Egypt, but also for projecting an image of unity and strength to Egypt's foreign allies and rivals. Nefertari's legacy continued even after her death, as Ramses' devotion to her was evident throughout his reign. Even though Ramses had many wives, none ever seemed to replace Nefertari in terms of the affection and honor he bestowed upon her. The monuments, statues, and inscriptions dedicated to her serve as lasting reminders of her importance in Ramses' life and in Egyptian history. Though much of Nefertari's life remains shrouded in mystery, what we do know about her paints a picture of a queen who was deeply loved and respected by Ramses II, and who played a significant role in the political, religious, and cultural life of ancient Egypt. Her memory lives on not only through the monumental structures built in her honor, but also in the art and inscriptions that depict her as both a beloved wife and a powerful figure in her own right. As we continue the story of Ramses II, we will explore the religious significance of his reign and how he portrayed himself as a living god on earth, further solidifying his place in both the divine and mortal realms. Ramses as a living god, religious significance. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was not only the political and military leader, but also regarded as a living god, the earthly embodiment of divine power. Ramses II fully embraced this role, presenting himself as a god-king whose authority was sanctioned by the gods themselves. Throughout his reign, Ramses made it a priority to reinforce this divine status, using religious ceremonies, monumental architecture, and art to convey his connection to the gods. His self-deification not only strengthened his grip on power, but also ensured that he would be remembered as one of Egypt's most revered rulers, both in life and death. From the moment Ramses ascended to the throne, he understood the importance of establishing himself as a god on earth. His coronation ceremony was a deeply religious event filled with rituals that affirmed his divine right to rule. The most important part of the ceremony involved the bestowing of the 5 royal names, each of which reflected a different aspect of his kingship and his connection to the divine. These names included titles such as Son of Ra and Beloved of Ammonius, emphasizing his role as the intermediary between the gods and the people of Egypt. As pharaoh, Ramses' divine status was constantly reaffirmed through religious festivals and rituals. One of the most important of these festivals was the Opet festival, held annually in Thebes. During this festival, the statues of the gods Ammonius, Mut, and Khonsu were paraded from the Karnak temple to the Luxor temple in a grand procession. Ramses, as the living god, participated in these ceremonies, reinforcing his connection to the gods and the idea that his rule was a continuation of divine will. The Opet festival was a public display of Ramses' power and his role as the protector of Ma'at, the ancient Egyptian concept of truth, justice, and cosmic order. Ramses also made extensive use of monumental architecture to assert his divinity. His grand temples and statues often depicted him as equal to the gods, and sometimes even as a god himself. At the temple of Abu Simbel, Ramses had 4 colossal statues of himself carved into the facade of the great temple, each standing over 20 meters high. These statues portray Ramses in the traditional pose of a pharaoh, seated on a throne and wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. However, their size and placement alongside the gods Ammonius, Horti, and Ta suggest that Ramses was not just a mortal king but a divine figure in his own right. Inside the great temple of Abu Simbel, further depictions of Ramses emphasize his divine status. In one of the temple's most sacred spaces, the innermost sanctuary, statues of Ramses sit alongside the gods he was closely associated with. Twice a year, during the solar alignment of the temple, sunlight penetrates the inner sanctuary and illuminates the statues of Ramses and the gods, a phenomenon that was carefully designed to highlight Ramses' connection to the cosmos and the gods. This alignment was a powerful statement of his divine legitimacy, showcasing Ramses as a ruler whose power was blessed by the gods themselves. Another important aspect of Ramses' religious significance was his association with the god Ammonius, one of the most important deities in the Egyptian pantheon. Ammonius, who was often merged with the sun god Ra to form Ammonius Ra, was considered the king of the gods and the protector of Egypt. Throughout his reign, Ramses made significant contributions to the Temple of Karnak, the principal temple of Ammonius in Thebes. He expanded the temple complex, adding new pylons, courtyards, and statues, all dedicated to Ammonius and intended to reinforce his close relationship with the god. Ramses portrayed himself as the chosen one of Ammonius, using his divine favor as a way to legitimize his rule. In addition to Ammonius, Ramses was closely associated with the god Ra, the sun god and creator of all life. As son of Ra, Ramses portrayed himself as the physical manifestation of Ra's power on earth. His connection to Ra was emphasized through his architectural projects, particularly at the temples of Abu Simbel and the Ramesseum. In both temples, Ramses is depicted offering sacrifices to Ra and receiving blessings from the god, further solidifying his role as Ra's representative on earth. Ramses also used his divine status to emphasize his role as a protector and benefactor of the Egyptian people. In many inscriptions, he is referred to as the giver of life and the protector of Egypt, titles that were traditionally reserved for the gods. This self-deification served a dual purpose. It reinforced the idea that Ramses' rule was divinely ordained, and it encouraged the people to view him as their guardian and protector. By presenting himself as a god-king, Ramses was able to maintain control over his vast empire and inspire loyalty among his subjects. Ramses' divine status extended beyond his lifetime, as he was worshipped as a god even after his death. Temples dedicated to his cult were built in various parts of Egypt, where priests offered sacrifices to ensure his eternal life in the afterworld. Ramses' mortuary temple, the Ramesseum, was designed not only as a place of worship during his lifetime but also as a center for his posthumous cult. In this temple, Ramses was worshipped alongside the gods Ammonius and Ra, continuing his role as a divine ruler even in the afterlife. Ramses' portrayal as a living god had lasting effects on Egyptian culture and religion. His reign set a precedent for future pharaohs who would continue to emphasize their divine connections through art, architecture, and religious ceremonies. Ramses' ability to blend his role as a military leader, political ruler, and divine figure helped him maintain control over Egypt and ensured that his legacy would endure long after his death. As we continue exploring Ramses II's reign, we'll delve into the final years of his life and how he gradually transferred power to his successors, ensuring the continuity of his dynasty. The Great Temples of Abu Simbel. One of the most iconic and enduring symbols of Ramses II's reign is the magnificent temple complex at Abu Simbel, located in Nubia along the Nile River near the southern border of ancient Egypt. Built around 1264 BCE, the Great Temples of Abu Simbel stand as a testament to Ramses' ambition, his architectural vision, and his desire to immortalize both his own legacy and Egypt's dominance in the region. These colossal structures were not only religious monuments but also a political statement, showcasing Egypt's power to both its own people and neighboring regions. The most famous of the two temples is the Great Temple of Ramses II, dedicated to the gods Ammonius Ra, Horti, and Ptah, as well as to Ramses himself. The temple's facade is dominated by 4 colossal statues of Ramses, each towering over 20 meters in height. These statues, carved directly into the rock face of the cliffs, depict Ramses seated on his throne, wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. The sheer scale of these statues is awe-inspiring, designed to project the immense power and authority of Ramses, not only as a ruler but as a living god. The placement of the Great Temple in Nubia was no accident. Nubia was an important region for Egypt, rich in gold and other resources, and strategically located on the trade routes connecting Egypt to sub-Saharan Africa. By building the temple in this region, Ramses sought to reinforce Egypt's control over Nubia and remind the Nubian people of Egypt's dominance. The temple served as both a religious center and a political symbol, asserting Ramses' divine right to rule over the land and its people. One of the most remarkable features of the Great Temple is its solar alignment. Twice a year, on February 22nd and October 22nd, the first rays of the morning sun penetrate the entrance of the temple and illuminate the statues of Ramses and the gods Ammonius Ra and Horti inside the inner sanctuary. This phenomenon is a testament to the precise architectural and astronomical knowledge of the ancient Egyptians. The solar alignment was designed to coincide with important dates, possibly Ramses' birthday and the anniversary of his coronation, further emphasizing his divine connection to the sun god Ra. Inside the Great Temple, the grandeur continues. The walls are adorned with intricate reliefs depicting scenes from Ramses' military campaigns, including the famous Battle of Kadesh. These reliefs serve as both historical records and propaganda, glorifying Ramses as a victorious warrior king. One of the most notable scenes shows Ramses riding into battle on his chariot, drawing his bow, and leading the charge against the Hittites. The imagery emphasizes Ramses' role as a protector of Egypt, chosen by the gods to defend his people and ensure their prosperity. The inner sanctuary of the Great Temple houses the statues of 4 gods, Ammonius Ra, Horti, Ptah, and Ramses himself, positioned alongside these deities. This arrangement highlights Ramses' divine status, elevating him to the level of the gods and reinforcing the idea that his rule was sanctioned by divine forces. The inclusion of his own statue among those of the gods was a bold statement, one that emphasized his self-deification and his belief in his eternal legacy. Adjacent to the great temple of Ramses II is the small temple dedicated to Queen Nefertari and the goddess Hathor. This temple is equally significant, as it was rare for queens to have temples built in their honor. The small temple features 6 statues on its facade, 4 of Ramses and 2 of Nefertari, all standing at a height of 10 meters. The inclusion of Nefertari's statues at nearly the same size as Ramses is a testament to the deep affection Ramses held for her and her elevated status as his great royal wife. The dedication of the small temple to Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, and motherhood, further emphasizes Nefertari's importance in Ramses' life. Inside the temple, reliefs show Nefertari making offerings to Hathor and participating in religious rituals alongside Ramses. These depictions highlight Nefertari's role not only as Ramses' queen but also as an important figure in the religious and political life of Egypt. The temples of Abu Simbel were not just religious sites, they were part of Ramses' larger strategy to immortalize his reign and ensure that his legacy would endure for generations. The colossal statues, the intricate reliefs, and the solar alignment all served to project an image of Ramses as a god-king whose power was eternal and whose connection to the gods was unquestionable. The temples were a way for Ramses to remind both his subjects and his enemies of his divine right to rule and the might of the Egyptian empire. In the 1960s, the temples of Abu Simbel faced a new challenge. The construction of the Aswan High Dam threatened to submerge the site under the rising waters of Lake Nasser. In one of the most remarkable engineering feats of the 20th century, the temples were carefully dismantled and moved to higher ground to preserve them. This massive project, undertaken by a coalition of international governments and organizations, ensured that the temples would be saved from destruction and continue to inspire awe in visitors from around the world. Today, the great temples of Abu Simbel remain one of the most visited and iconic sites in Egypt. They stand as a lasting tribute to Ramses II's ambition, his devotion to the gods, and his determination to be remembered throughout history. The temples are not only a symbol of ancient Egyptian power and religion, but also a reminder of Ramses' unparalleled ability to blend architecture, art, and political symbolism into one of the most enduring legacies of the ancient world. Ramses' final years, longevity, and legacy. Ramses II's reign, one of the longest in Egyptian history, spanned nearly 66 years, from 1279 to 1213 BCE. By the time Ramses reached the final years of his life, he had already secured his place as one of Egypt's most significant and influential pharaohs. His long rule allowed him to shape nearly every aspect of Egyptian society, from its military conquests to its architectural achievements and diplomatic relations. However, as Ramses aged, the challenges of managing an empire and ensuring a stable succession became increasingly important, and he began to make careful preparations for his legacy. Ramses lived to be around 90 years old, an extraordinary age for the time, especially considering the many physical demands placed upon him as a ruler. His advanced age, coupled with the pressures of ruling such a vast empire, undoubtedly took a toll on his health. Although details about his medical conditions are scarce, some historical and archaeological evidence suggests that Ramses may have suffered from arthritis and dental issues. His long life, however, allowed him to witness several generations of his family grow up and take part in governing Egypt, which helped ensure the continuation of his dynasty after his death. As Ramses aged, one of his key concerns was the issue of succession. Having fathered over 100 children with multiple wives, including his beloved Nefertari, Ramses had many potential heirs. However, the loss of several of his elder sons during his long reign meant that the task of securing a successor became more complicated as time went on. His eventual successor, Merneptah, was Ramses' 13th son, and by the time he ascended to the throne, Merneptah was already in his 60s, having served as an important official and military leader under his father. Ramses carefully groomed his sons for leadership roles throughout his reign. Many of his children were given high-ranking positions in the military and administration, ensuring that they gained valuable experience in governance and warfare. Ramses' strategy of involving his sons in the affairs of the state not only prepared them for future leadership, but also reinforced his dynasty's control over the various regions of Egypt. By keeping his family close and involved in the running of the empire, Ramses was able to maintain stability during his final years. In addition to managing his succession, Ramses continued to focus on maintaining Egypt's prosperity and stability. The peace treaty with the Hittites, which he had negotiated earlier in his reign, continued to ensure a period of relative peace and diplomatic cooperation. This allowed Ramses to turn his attention to domestic affairs, ensuring that Egypt's agricultural output remained strong and that its trade routes were secure. The wealth generated from trade and tribute during his reign helped fund his ongoing building projects, including the completion of temples, statues, and monuments that would further cement his legacy. Ramses' later years were also marked by a focus on religion and his divine status. Having presented himself as a living god throughout his reign, Ramses continued to participate in religious ceremonies and festivals, reinforcing his connection to the gods. He took particular care in ensuring that his mortuary cult, which would continue after his death, was well established. His mortuary temple, the Ramesseum, located on the west bank of the Nile near Thebes, was one of the grandest ever built. This temple was not only a place of worship but also a center for his cult, where priests would continue to make offerings and prayers to him long after his death, ensuring his eternal life in the afterworld. As the years passed, Ramses became increasingly aware of his mortality. His legacy was of paramount importance to him, and he took great care in ensuring that his name would be remembered for generations to come. The sheer scale of his building projects, including Abu Simbel, the Ramesseum, and his additions to Karnak and Luxor, were all part of his effort to immortalize himself in the annals of history. These structures were designed not only to honor the gods, but also to glorify Ramses as a divine ruler whose power and influence would endure for all time. Ramses' final years were not without challenges. The empire he had built faced internal and external pressures, including threats from the Sea Peoples, a confederation of naval raiders who disrupted trade and attacked coastal settlements throughout the Mediterranean. While Egypt was able to fend off these invaders during Ramses' reign, the growing instability in the region would continue to pose problems for his successors. Despite these challenges, Ramses' longevity allowed him to secure Egypt's position as a dominant power in the ancient world. His ability to maintain stability, foster peace, and expand Egypt's influence through diplomacy and military might make him one of the most successful pharaohs in history. Even as he aged, Ramses' leadership remained strong, and his influence extended beyond his own reign into the future of Egypt. When Ramses II finally passed away around 1213 BCE, his death marked the end of an era. His reign had shaped Egypt in ways that few rulers before or after him could claim. His passing was mourned across the kingdom, but his legacy lived on through the monuments, temples, and statues that bore his name. Ramses was buried in the Valley of the Kings, the sacred burial ground of Egypt's pharaohs. Although his tomb was later plundered, his mummy was discovered in the late 19th century and now resides in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, a testament to his enduring presence in history. Ramses II's legacy as a great warrior, diplomat, builder, and god-king has continued to captivate historians, archaeologists, and the general public for thousands of years. His reign represented the height of Egypt's power and influence, and his efforts to immortalize himself through monumental architecture and inscriptions succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. Today, he is remembered not only as a pharaoh but as a symbol of ancient Egypt's greatness. As we explore Ramses' enduring legacy, it becomes clear that his influence did not end with his death. His descendants, particularly his son Merneptah, carried on his dynasty, and the structures he built continued to shape the cultural and religious landscape of Egypt for centuries to come. His long reign ensured that his name would echo through the ages, leaving an indelible mark on the history of Egypt and the world. The death of Ramses II and his immortal legacy. Ramses II, often referred to as Ramses the Great, reigned over Egypt for an extraordinary 66 years, leaving behind a legacy unmatched by most pharaohs in ancient history. By the time of his death in 1213 BCE, Ramses was nearly 90 years old, a remarkable feat for a ruler in ancient times, when the average lifespan was far shorter. His long life and reign allowed him to not only build and expand Egypt's influence but also to secure his place in history as one of the most celebrated and influential figures of the ancient world. As Ramses neared the end of his life, Egypt remained a stable and prosperous kingdom, largely due to his leadership and policies. However, like all rulers, Ramses knew that his time would eventually come to an end, and he made careful preparations to ensure that his legacy would endure long after his death. His concern with immortality, both in the religious and political sense, was evident in the monumental projects he undertook throughout his reign, including temples, statues, and inscriptions that bore his name and image. Ramses' death marked the end of an era in Egyptian history. His passing was a significant event for the entire kingdom, as he had been the pharaoh for most Egyptians' entire lives. For decades, Ramses had been a symbol of stability, power, and divine favor. His death not only represented the loss of a great ruler but also the closing of a chapter in Egypt's history. Following his death, Ramses was laid to rest in the Valley of the Kings, the sacred burial ground reserved for the pharaohs of Egypt's new kingdom. His tomb, known as KV7, was constructed to ensure his passage into the afterlife, in keeping with the ancient Egyptian belief that death was not an end but a transition to a new existence. The tomb was filled with the necessary items Ramses would need for the afterlife, including treasures, food, and religious texts, all designed to protect him on his journey and ensure his eternal life among the gods. However, like many royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, Ramses' tomb was later looted, and much of its original contents were lost to history. Despite the tomb's grandeur and its intended purpose as a final resting place, it was not immune to the fate that befell many of Egypt's royal burial sites. Fortunately, Ramses' mummy was discovered in 1881, reburied in the tomb of High Priest Pinagem II to protect it from grave robbers. His mummy is now housed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it continues to be a symbol of ancient Egyptian history and culture. Despite the loss of many of the treasures that originally accompanied Ramses' death, his legacy lived on in other ways. The monumental structures he built during his reign, including Abu Simbel, the Ramesseum, and his contributions to Karnak and Luxor continue to inspire awe and admiration long after his death. These grand works ensured that Ramses' name and image would be remembered, not just by his immediate successors, but by future generations of Egyptians and beyond. One of the most enduring aspects of Ramses' legacy is the way he presented himself as a living god during his lifetime. This portrayal ensured that his divine status would continue after his death, as his mortuary cult remained active for centuries. Priests and temples across Egypt continued to make offerings in his name, and the festivals and rituals that honored his memory kept his presence alive in the religious life of the country. Through these practices, Ramses was immortalized not only in stone but also in the hearts and minds of his people. Ramses' son, Merneptah, succeeded him after his death. Merneptah was already in his 60s when he took the throne, having served as an important military leader under his father. Although Merneptah's reign was relatively short compared to that of Ramses, he continued many of his father's policies and worked to maintain the stability and security of Egypt. The strength of the dynasty that Ramses had established ensured that Egypt remained a powerful and prosperous kingdom for many years after his death. Ramses' impact on Egypt and the ancient world extended beyond his immediate successors. His reign became a model for later pharaohs, who sought to emulate his military success, his monumental building projects, and his ability to maintain peace and stability within the kingdom. His image as a powerful, divine ruler persisted in Egyptian culture for centuries, influencing not only his immediate descendants but also the pharaohs of later dynasties. One of the most remarkable aspects of Ramses' legacy is his enduring presence in modern history and archaeology. His life and reign have fascinated scholars, historians, and archaeologists for centuries. The discovery of his mummy, the preservation of his temples, and the detailed inscriptions he left behind have all contributed to a deeper understanding of ancient Egyptian culture and history. Ramses' name has become synonymous with the power and grandeur of Egypt's new kingdom, and his accomplishments continue to be studied and celebrated to this day. In popular culture, Ramses has often been depicted as one of the greatest pharaohs of all time, a ruler whose ambition, strength, and divine authority shaped the course of history. His image as a warrior king, a builder, and a godlike figure has left an indelible mark on the imagination of people worldwide. From films and books to museum exhibits and documentaries, Ramses' legacy continues to captivate audiences and inspire awe, just as it did in ancient times. In conclusion, Ramses II's death was not the end of his story but the beginning of his eternal legacy. His reign shaped the course of Egyptian history and left a lasting imprint on the world. Through his monumental works, his military campaigns, and his divine portrayal, Ramses ensured that his name would be remembered for millennia. Even in death, Ramses remains one of the most iconic figures in ancient history, a symbol of the power and majesty of ancient Egypt. In this video, we explored the incredible life and reign of Ramses II, one of ancient Egypt's most powerful and influential pharaohs. From his early life as a prince, his rise to the throne, and his military victories, to his monumental building projects and his role as a living god, Ramses left an indelible mark on history. We also delved into his diplomatic successes, the importance of Queen Nefertari, and the construction of the breathtaking temples of Abu Simbel. Ramses' legacy as a ruler who sought immortality through his achievements, temples, and influence has transcended the centuries, and his name continues to echo through the ages as Ramses the Great. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the life of one of ancient Egypt's greatest rulers. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future stories. I look forward to sharing more fascinating tales from history with you very soon. Take care and stay curious.